Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to dive deeper into the Genesis story as we build our personal narrative. We need to understand, what kind of world are we living in? Who am I? What's a human? What are the rules here? Because I want to succeed. I want to know how to avoid the dangers. I need to know what the dangers are and where to find the supplies and the source for success in my life. And I think the Bible is here to teach us all these things, and it does it in symbolic language so that people from every walk of life can understand it. It's not a part of religion. It's a part of human conception that the Bible would give us our understanding before the institution of formal religions on the earth. They are the oldest stories known to man. They explain to us the creation of our world, and these stories are echoed in cultures all over the world. There are stories within the Genesis narrative that you will find all over the planet in the most ancient of cultures. Actually, if you dig in through old societies and, trying to look and say, what is the original religion? What if we could come down to what the earliest humans believed, we keep finding this vein, and it sort of runs like this. The world was created by one being, a very powerful being. He made humans, and we messed up. We did something that caused him to go away, and we have been left under the power of lesser gods. They are the small ones. Many of them are very mean to us. They're cruel against us, and we're just stuck underneath their power. You'll find that story told in culture after culture. And so, sort of an outline of that you will find here in the Genesis story as well, except, thank God, we're not abandoned by our Creator. In the last episode, we talked about the perfect first sentence that tells us the world was created, the universe, physical universe, was created by one being, and that it was created with two dimensions, heavenly dimension, earthly dimension. Now, let's go beyond that. If I was going to entitle this episode, I would want to talk about a world of trouble, because the Bible doesn't open with glowing sunshine coming over a hilltop. It opens with three forces of dark, destructive power. These three characters, and these are going to be symbolic characters, and that means they are true. And they are true in symbol form, and you can find them at many different levels throughout the creation. Verse 2, the earth, see, now we're not talking about the heaven and the earth, we're talking about the earth. The earth was without form and void. In Hebrew, tohu vabohu. I want to talk about that in a minute. The earth was tohu vabohu, number one. And darkness was on the face of, number three, the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Three characters. The first one, tohu vabohu, being without a form, without a line, without a barrier, and having no meaning, being undefined. That is it's basically, if we were going to use science speak, we could say entropy. Entropy is according to the scriptures, entropy is the default state of the universe. And entropy is really bare. I mean, it is everywhere. We start our life as humans, and you're this weak little baby. You're laying on your back. You can't even get up. Gravity's holding you down, and you start fighting against it. You learn to roll. You can't sit up yet, but you can roll against it. Then you sit up. You learn to sit. Then you learn to stand. You get in your strength. You learn not to just stand. You learn to run, but you're running against entropy, and it's not going to stop. It continues to work on you, one grain of sand at a time. And then you stop being able to run and you start walking, and then you get older and you can hardly walk, and then you sit, and then after a while you're laying again, and then you're gone, and then the world takes you back to sand. And it's like, it's entropy. You can't beat it. You build a building and don't touch it. Don't do a thing to mess it up, but just leave it alone. But come back. Come back in 5 years. Come back in 10 years. It's going to be broken. Things are going to fall down. It's like, why? Entropy. It is relentless. The entire universe is under the pelting force of entropy. It pulls forms into formlessness. And when it does that, it pulls them into meaninglessness. And this is one of the very first lessons of Scripture, is that you have to have lines. You can only build, I have a friend, David Powers, who's a surgeon, and he says nature hates a vacuum. That's true. But in his work as a surgeon, he says, and nature hates a 90-degree angle. You will not find a corner in nature. It doesn't like it. We build corners. And basically every human tool, that's another insight from Pajot's book, we build tools. Every tool is basically applying force to a point. And you only get a point, whether it's a plow or a nail or a hammer or a needle, whatever it is, tools are always applying force to one point. And so to get a point, we've got to get a 90-degree angle or something approximating an angle. And nature doesn't like these angles. Nature likes circles, roundness, and nature will round things like pebbles in a river. And so the only way to build, the only way to stand against the forces of entropy and not to become tohu vabohu is to build corners and squares. And humans have learned to do that. And, surrounding me are all these buildings, and they're not domes. They are 90-degree angle buildings, and we've learned we could do all kinds of things. As long as we can maintain an angle against nature, we can bring an artificial order against a circular nature. Nature is always going to run in a circle. It's always going to tear things down. Even while new life is coming up, old life is being destroyed. And this is the default state of the universe. Tohu vabohu. And not only that, it's not only without form and void, but now you've got darkness. Now you come to a new metaphor, not just a metaphor, but a symbol, and it goes all the way through the Scriptures. Darkness versus light. Darkness, not just as the absence of light. That's not what we're talking about. It's a symbol of positive darkness. Like, it's got energy. It's the darkness. It's the Star Wars darkness. It's got force behind it to envelop things and to shroud them. These are three enemies of us. One is the formlessness that entropy creates. The second one is this darkness where you become blind to the world. You're groping. You can't see light. You can't see your way forward. You can't see what the problems are. You can't even devise a solution because you can't see anything. You're in darkness. Not only that, third great negative power against us, and that is the deep. Now, there's no need to go looking in the ocean and say, is this about the Marianas Trench? Is this about how deep the oceans are? It's a symbol language. It's real, but it's symbolic at the same time. The deep is the primordial deep. It's the bottomless black ocean. It is horrifying. You don't stand a chance against it. It's the North Sea at its worst. It's this downward sucking deep. It has no end. There are things that live in there. All of them are so massive and powerful, and we're just this. And that's how the world begins. Now, this brings up a curious question. Zoroastrianism says that thing is eternal. Because, what I'm trying to say is this belief system that I'm unpacking for you is the world's ancient belief system. It is in most of the world's religions. And I think all truth is God's truth. He's got truth, and it's been sought out by humans forever. And in all the religions of the world, people have been earnestly seeking for truth. And they have dug out some things that we all agree on. And here is this one. We are fighting this force. Humans fight it. We fight it with the rise. I mean, why can't civilization just stay there? It rises and it collapses on itself. Why can't the wave collapses and the human waves collapse, and you rise up and you build all you can with all the energy in you, and then it is overthrown and it's destroyed. And this happens over and over. We see it in our lives. We see it in our nations. Almost no nation of the world, even empires, have remained the world power for even 100 years. Always these forces that pull it down. It turns dark. Even if it starts with very noble ambitions and it rises up, it turns dark at some point. You give a good man too much power. By the end of his days, we see that in the life of David. By the end of his days, it's like, man, he's darkness. David dies. He's pathetic. He is not David of his early adulthood. In his late midlife, he just falls apart and he ends up this just pathetic man. There's nothing about him that you should want. It's that thing. It's that darkness. So Zoroastrianism, which is an ancient religion, they say it's always been here. It's just the default state. Other people say, no, this is the first stage of creation, that even the darkness is created by the Creator. And it's worth pondering. This passage does not say it. I asked a rabbi once about something related to this, and he says it doesn't even say that the world was created from nothing. It just says the world was created. So some of these things, there are some things that we know clearly, and there's some things that we don't know. But if you keep following the line of thought, they lead you to different places. If this is an eternal state that just is, then I guess some would be afraid that would lead to a less powerful God. But God is what he is. He's not our joint project. It's not for us to create God to be what we think God should be. He is. And one day we will see this. Paul says we're like looking through a smudged up glass trying to see, and we don't see clearly. And especially things at this level, we just do our best. We will see from the story a benevolent Creator who's totally invested in this creation of his. He wants to live, and he makes this creature as the apex of his creative ability on this planet, and he wants a beautiful relationship with this creature. So I want to know this God. I want to understand this God. So either this darkness is just there. It has always been there, and he had to fight against it. Now, what is clear is that in the Bible's telling of our narrative, God is stronger than the darkness. He is stronger than Tohu Vabohu's effect. He is stronger than the deep. He conquers all of them. And in ancient religions, the God who stands has to conquer these things. But these things do not go away either. They continue to push back. They push back against the Creator, but more so, they push back against the creation. That's the point of this. There are forces that push back against creation that will destroy creation every day, every minute, every second. And all that is needed is for the Creator to stop fighting against these three enemies in our lives. If the Creator God, people say, I just want God to leave us alone. Man, if he leaves you alone for even a millisecond, you're gone. Because we only exist because of his active presence pushing back the destructive darkness before it overwhelms us. We will all, and this is what happens, we will see it in chapter 6 of this story where humans resist and rebel and push back against God. The heavenly realm rebels. Some within the heavenly realm rebel and push back against God. They pollute and pervert the creation. And all he has to do is ease off a little bit, and decreation immediately comes in. The deep comes back over and it floods the dry land. And so you're going to see this dry land flooded by the deep. You have to always, like the children of Israel going out of Egypt, they have to go through the flood to get to the dry land. And it can only happen by a miracle of God, that God will part the deep and allow them to go through on dry land. And this cycle that is always there. And all you have to do is push God away far enough. And if he ever decides in his heart to release his hold, we are destroyed, not by an active work of God, but by the darkness and the deep, and by entropy always pulling us apart. We live, we are completely dependent upon his mercy, and we receive it second by second. And most of us don't thank him for it, aren't even aware of it. And yet, here he's got us in this safe pocket when these things are around us at every minute. On the other hand, you can look at the story and say, he is in control of even the forces of destruction in the world, that I'm not going to fear the things that can destroy me, because as long as death is here, it's going to win. We get our days of our life to use our free will and to demonstrate what we do with free will in a physical universe. Maybe later we'll have a time to just talk about what a physical universe makes possible, because there are some contradictions in a physical universe. If everyone is in a physical universe and has free will, our decisions impact each other. If I go blazing through a crosswalk with people, walking through, I am going to change some people's lives, and I have the power to do that. And a physical world allows that. So here you've just got, it's sort of an ominous beginning to the story. It lets you see this is the story of heaven and earth and everyone who lives in both dimensions. But the backdrop, sort of like the diamond, if you want to see a diamond, you don't look at it on a piece of white paper. You put black velvet behind it and a good bright light, and now the diamond's going to pick up that light and you're going to see it against the darkness. So our story begins with an ominous, destructive presence all the way around us. We are under the deep because earthland has to rise up. So the whole dream is buried under the deep. The dream is buried in the darkness, and the dream has been pulled to shreds. There's nothing there. Everything's just floating meaninglessness. And yet, look at how that second verse ends. The Spirit, the breath, that word means breath. The breath of the Creator God was hovering over the face of the waters. See, now he's humanizing, even this deep, he's humanizing, and we're going to end up with Mother Earth coming up out of this. But God's face is down on the face of the water, and his breath is breathing into planet Earth. And later we'll see this repeated again. And in the New Testament, we'll see it repeated again by Jesus to his disciples as he breathes on his disciples. But this is like a pregnant moment where there's all this peril, but somewhere in this deep soup of darkness, there is a dream of God, and he is preparing for it, and his presence is laying over the deep, and he's about to bring life and beauty out of it. And that's the gospel. That's the gospel. I don't know where you're at in your life right now. I don't know how much darkness is in your life, but I know I investigated the darkness as a young man. I went into the darkness to see what all was there, and I was hurt by it. And I was so grateful when God shined a light on me, and he let me follow that light, and he got me out of that place. And I don't ever want to go back there again. So I encourage you, run from the darkness. Whatever darkness is around you, don't feed on things that are darkness. Don't read them. Don't watch them. Don't get near them. Your associations are so important in your life. If you are putting yourself in places and relational circles that are dark, it's going to pull you down into it. So I encourage you, keep digging into this story. But again, not for the sake of doctrine, not for the sake of historical inquiry, but that you might know the God who made you. The whole reason that we're going through this is to build a narrative, to build an honest, trustworthy narrative, to say, what kind of world is this that I'm living in? And how do I live well in this world? And what does the Creator want from me? And so that's where we're at. We're all surrounded with peril, but we've got a hero, and we have a great God all above us. And we might seem small in our own eyes, but we're important to Him. And He is our defender, and He is the one that brings life to us. So God bless you, and we'll see you soon in the next episode.